ready? Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Parks and Recreation Commission for the City of Vacaville, August 4th, 2021. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Commissioner Berumen?
Here.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Here.
Commissioner Leonard?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Vandertoolen?
Here.
Vice Chair Vasquez? Chair McMahon?
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Thompson, would you please lead us in the pledge this evening? Thank you very much, sir. Item number 3, approval of the agenda for this evening. Madam Secretary, are there any corrections or changes to the agenda?
I have received none, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will now entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
If you would, gentlemen, if you would go ahead and request to speak, and we'll turn your mic on, please. Let's go back. So we do have a motion from Bruin and a second from Vandertoolen. All in favor, we are voting in front of our screens this evening. So all in favor, you can vote now. And the motion passes. We are now at item number 4, approval of the minutes. We are approving 2 meetings this evening for June the 2nd of 2021. That was our regular scheduled meeting, as well as our special meeting for July 24th, 2021. And I would like to make a statement for the July 24th, 2021 meeting. At that meeting, the commission did take action and vote to appoint Commissioner Leonard in the event of the absence of Vice Chair or myself not being at this meeting. As you can see, I'm here. At this point, I will now accept a motion to accept those minutes as written. Commissioner Bruin.
I move to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
And a second, please.
I'll second that, please.
Second there. Okay, we have Commissioner Vandertoolen, and we will vote now. And the motion passes. We're moving along to item number 5, communications. Madam Secretary, do we want to, or do we have communications this evening? Madam Director?
Yes, Chair McMahon, we certainly do. In your packet is a communication from Stanton Hales expressing concern over the lack of attention given to the sport of badminton in the recently approved Park and Recreation Master Plan. And I have followed up with Mr. Hales and let him know, since he requested to come and address the commission following Labor Day, I shared the information with him related to date, time of our October meeting, and we'll go ahead and send him out an agenda for that meeting.
Perfect. Thank you very much, ma'am. Item number 6, presentations. Tonight, we have the honor of recognizing a few citizens from our community. Melody Ocampo, would you like to introduce our guest?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. Bob, would you join me up here? Unfortunately, our committee member, Lori Hartley, could not make it this evening after all, so we will be sending our thanks in other ways. So we have this little gift for you. For those who don't know Bob, otherwise known as Downtown Bob, he has been serving on the Arts Advisory Committee for many years and actually came to us when he was the executive director of the Downtown Business Improvement District. He's served multiple terms with our Arts Advisory Committee and been involved in the purchase of various public art pieces, as well as the selection of bands for events such as the Creek Walk concert series that happens every summer. So he has also been a key player in the Jepson Parkway Art Project and has stuck with it through the years. You may remember that it actually came to this commission not too long ago as we were removing a tree that was blocking the view. And I really have to give Bob a lot of credit because he was so dedicated to just ensuring that that artwork was displayed as it should be. And I really thank him for that and all his many, many years of service. Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you all. You all do a great job. Carrie, wonderful working with you all these years and everything, and keep up the good work. It's, arts are very important to our community and our lives, and thank you. Thank you for the part of you. Thanks.
Bob, thank you for everything you do. You're everywhere, all over town, and we appreciate it. And thank you for your service on the Arts Committee. Thank you,
Thanks.
sir. All right, be safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Item number 7, business from the floor. This is the time to address the commission with issues that are not on the agenda that are within the commission subject matters jurisdiction. Maximum of 3 minutes per speaker, please.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, sir. Can you state your name for the record,
Sure.
please?
My name's Stu Clary, longtime Vacaville resident. Actually, it's really cool being back here. I was a longtime community services department employee. Hi, Carrie. Currently a special education teacher, coach, and I'm one of the athletic directors at Vacaville High School. Now, I have a colleague with me, Brian Davis, also a teacher at Vaca High. And the other thing we have in common is we're both avid disc golf players. I know there's been some discussion about disc golf recently, and we're here today just to, we would love to see a disc golf course developed in town. We have a fantastic facility at Lagoon Valley. It's awesome. People come from all over, all points. We've met people from Sacramento and beyond. We've met people from the Bay Area and beyond. They all come here to play. What it's not necessarily is beginner or kid friendly. It would be really, really cool, and I think a good use of our Measure M money to install, develop a 9-hole, I would call intermediate disc golf course in town that kids or other beginners would feel comfortable going to, could ride their bikes to if it's in a neighborhood. Many of our neighboring communities have disc golf courses or are developing some. Vallejo has one going in. The GVRD is just approved, which is going to be super cool. Brian and I actually played in the test run that they had. Excuse me. Dixon's developing one at Hall Park, which will be a little less interesting and something I wanted to get to. If there's an appetite for this, and I would hope that, let me back up. What makes a disc golf course cool and interesting and what people will want to play are obstacles like mature trees, rock outcroppings, elevation changes. That's not going to happen at Dixon. I'm hoping if we put one in, we don't just pick a random park and put baskets out. That would be cool for beginners, again, for kids in the neighborhood to go to, but it's not something that people will want to come to. I think over the course of summer, between the two of us, Brian and I have probably played about 40 different courses, well, at least 20. Earlier this week, he and I played together at Golden Gate Park. He played down in the Central Coast Wine Country. I played, a week ago today, I was playing at Morley Field in San Diego. People will come. We regularly go to South Sacramento and play a park called Reichmuth Park. And it's a 9-hole course with 2 baskets on each hole, which creates an 18-hole course. It's something I really think would go over well here. And 2 things would happen. People from out of town will come, spend their money in our town, have a good time, have a good impression. But also, something like that, that's not out of Lagoon, we could see, beginners, we could see kids coming out and participating. Additionally, There are several of our other colleagues at Vacaville that are also disc golfers. And many have expressed an interest in starting a junior high and high school club to get others interested in the sport. I know there's been some talk. I've actually been, like, the past couple of months, I've been going around town and looking at different places, and I only found out recently there's the undeveloped portion of Nelson Park has already been planned, but that undeveloped portion of Nelson Park would make an awesome 9-hole disc golf course. We've actually walked it. I've walked it with a couple of times with other disc golfers. I brought my Frisbees out there and played the course that I saw in my mind. I know there's something that's been approved, that's planned. I'm just wondering if something like this going around the perimeter of that currently undeveloped portion of Nelson Park, I wonder if that would be a complementary feature of that park or not. So anyway, I appreciate your time. Again, it's cool to be back here. I haven't been in this room in a long time, but it's very cool to be here. I appreciate what you guys do, and thanks for the opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. Any other further comments for public comment tonight? Okay, we'll close public comment. Mr. Hesterman, would you like to address some of the questions or comments from our speaker?
Sure. Stu, just so you know, good, how you doing? We do have a project that is Measure M funded for Sierra Vista Park. And that has mature trees, it has obstacles, it's a roughly little over 8-acre park. And we haven't, some preliminary plans have been tossed about, but the idea is a 9-hole course there with alternate baskets at that location.
Is there a committee or anything that maybe we can join or help out?
Not yet, but we'll take your name and contact information, and when we get to that point, we'd be happy to contact you. Perfect.
Contact info. I'm very confident that we could maybe come up with some volunteers also to help out. The other thing I thought of when talking to some people about.
I wonder, excuse me, Stu, you probably should be using the mic now that I think about it.
Sir, please come on up. Otherwise, the public won't hear you. So,
One other thing I thought about, if we get to the point of construction, I would love to contact the Boy Scouts and see if there's anyone that, Eagle Scout candidate that, I know the park in Lodi is 100% constructed by, it was an Eagle Scout project, which is super cool, I'm sure we can get some disc golfers out there and provide some sweat equity also, though. But I'll send you an email with my contact info, and we'd love to be involved. I'll grab your card right now.
thank you very much.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, sir. We, again, we'll close public comment for this evening. Thank you very much. Hugh, thank you for that explanation.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Item number 8, reports of Park Manager David Jacobson, please.
Good evening, Commissioner, Chair, Commissioners. So for tonight, I have a couple maintenance items to inform you about. First is Keating Park, the eucalyptus trees in the park, and this this started back in 2016, so I'm gonna kind of go back a little bit and then tell you what's going on currently. So the trees that I'm talking about are the ones on the bottom of the screen there along the southern boundary of the park that abuts the prison property. So in September of 2016, we Public Works Maintenance had a consulting arborist take a look at the 28 existing really large eucalyptus trees, and he performed a level 2 risk assessment for those 28 trees and identified 5 at that time that needed to be removed immediately because they were structurally defective. He also recommended doing a level 3, which in the arborist world is they use a sonic tomography, which is similar to like in the medical field, resonance imaging. They say ultrasound looking inside the tree. And he located another 4 trees based on that to be removed. So that was done in 2016 and beginning of 2017. And then just in April of this year, it's a tree that's in that same area. It's number 915. It toppled and fell into the overhead communication lines in the park. And so the tree basically fell over. And then that same period of time, another tree lost a very large limb, fell, didn't hurt anybody, but there was people in the park using the park at that time. So we reached out, contacted him again, and in May, he came out and performed another risk assessment of the remaining 19 trees, and identified 6 additional trees that had deteriorated in the last 5-6 years, and recommended those for removal, and then continued on with some more sonic imagery on the remaining trees just this past month in July, and identified another 5. So that'd be a total of 11 for this year. And they're scheduled to be removed this month. What I wanted to show you was just an example. So that's basically the imagery that the sonic tomography produces, justifying the need to remove the trees. As you can see, the brown is like sound competent structural wood, and the purple is basically defective, could be hollow, but it's basically damaged, non-structural, healthy material. And then the second thing I had tonight was October of 2020. Southwood Park had a fire that started in the creek that's adjacent to the park on the northern boundary of Alamo Creek in the park. And the fire migrated into the park. You can see and basically burned all the existing landscaping. And the picture on the right is just last week. We've gotten the irrigation restored and plants, and we're going to plant some trees here in about probably around October, get a couple more trees in there. And that concludes my report.
David, thank you very much, sir. I will open it to the commission. Any comments or questions for David this evening from the commission? Commissioner Bruman.
Yeah. Hey, David, regarding those eucalyptus trees, how many were there that were going to be removed?
I think it was initially, there was 9, and
Okay.
there's 11 they're going to do this month.
Yeah, I know those things can be dangerous because they automatically drop limbs like crazy. I was at
Yeah.
a ballpark and I moved my car and boom, one limb
Right.
just came flying. Those
Right.
things become dangerous and liability.
Yeah, a little more discussion on that. The community development department is involved in this process too, as we get tree removal permits, and there's conditions that are placed on us for replacement of the trees. And that will happen, phased out down the road as fiscal year budgets allow. But we put provisions in when the park was overlaid, was it last year, I believe? We put in chases and sleeves under all the new pavement because we anticipating putting irrigation in there in the future.
Nice.
So kind of thought ahead there. And then we'll start probably this fall working on slowly trying to get trees replaced. But it's just going to take time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Leonard.
Thank you. And I know the eucalyptus can be dangerous and they're invasive. There's a lot of reason to remove them. Can you give a little information about how the city determines the timing? Do we set timing based on, and there may be laws in place too around that, but around nesting seasons and other things like that, do we have kind of a system that we use, or how does the scheduling work?
You for nesting birds?
Mm-hmm. And other animals?
We have a fish and game permit for routine maintenance, applies to the creeks in the city, and there's provisions in there for the nesting bird. Typically in a park or a setback landscaping where there's mature trees, the arborist usually will point out, hey, there's a nest in here, and then we have a consulting biologist that we use for stuff like that, and they would come out and review and see, a biologist comes out early in the morning and sees what type of birds are going in and out, if any. But typically, on the fish and game list, it's the Swenson's hawk is predominantly the bird they're looking for. But they advise us if there's any. So that's usually how that's handled.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Gutierrez.
Quick question, out at Keating Park, during our facilities tour, we just recently learned through Hugh Hesterman that the area or the land is owned by the state. So do we need to do any coordination with the state when we do any type of tree removal out there?
We have the agreement's called the Joint Powers Agreement between the city of Vacaville and the state of California. It's a pretty extensively thick document. The portion to the park is only a couple pages, and we are responsible for the maintenance of the park. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Any further commissioner comments or questions for David? Seeing none, David, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We're now at 9A, business. And this evening, the commission will vote on Arts Advisory Committee appointments. Tonight, we have 3 individuals, citizens that we're looking to appoint: Amy Robeson, Brooke Fox, as well as Colleen Schoolman, for the Arts Advisory Committee. Melody, would you like to speak a bit about our candidates?
Absolutely, Chair. So we actually put together a subcommittee from the commission, and Commissioner Gutierrez and Commissioner Leonard served and interviewed the candidates. We did interview, I believe, all the applicants that were qualifying, and that was run through the Deputy City Clerk, I believe, just to ensure that I think we're all residents. Out of our 7 candidates, I believe 6 showed. I'm looking at the lady, and so we did, take our time, and they did their due diligence and were able to provide the recommendation that you see here today.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll open up for commissioner comments. Seeing none, we'll open it for public comment. We'll close public comment. At this point, I'd be willing to accept a motion. Commissioner Gutierrez.
I approve the people that we selected for the Arts Advisory Committee.
So why don't we go ahead and read the motion itself, if you would. By simple motion, Parks and Rec Commission appoint the 3 names, and we'll go from there. On 9A, just read the motion itself. All right, right there.
Arts Advisory Committee appointments by simple motion. The Parks and Rec Commission appoint Amy Robinson, Brooke Fox, and Colleen Schulman to the Arts Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Commissioner Bruman.
I will second.
We have a Gutierrez and Bruman. At this point, we will now vote. All in favor? And it's unanimous. The motion passes. We're now at 9B, and we are back to the roadmap at 7B, Parks Development Process. Director Walker, I apologize. Would you like to introduce this?
Absolutely. So actually, the first portion of Road Stop 7B was presented by our park planner, Hugh Hesterman, some time ago. And so we're nearing the end of our roadmap here. And so tonight, Hugh will be focusing on community parks, open space, trails, and then we'll be reaching stop 9 on our roadmap next month, and we'll be focusing on program development. So we're getting close, and I'm going to turn it over to Hugh for his presentation.
Thank you very much, Director Walker. So tonight, as you just laid out, we are at the second part of the roadmap presentation for item 7B, Road Stop 7B. And this will cover very quickly community parks, regional park, open space, and trails. And I don't hesitate to to stop me if I'm missing something along the way, but I will try to give a thorough but yet brief description on each of these. We'll start with community parks. Community parks provide, I guess I got to adjust here so I can see my notes. They provide active use recreational facilities, spaces for large events, areas for passive recreation, as well as serving nearby residents, those living within a half mile, with basic recreational facilities like you'd find in a typical neighborhood park. And as with all of our parks, we aspire to provide unique spaces that are inviting, accommodating, and ultimately provide as much of the special use facilities desired by the public as we can afford to build and maintain. Okay. Let me try a different method. Oh, it went back. Bear with me just a moment. Okay. So as with neighborhood parks and also our regional park category, the need for new community park space or developed acres is driven by the development of new neighborhoods, meaning new people in town, more residents. So more properly said, you might say residential development increases the number of city residents, which in turn increases the need for new parkland, community parks in specific, since we're talking about tonight. And community parks are typically larger than neighborhood parks, and they provide space for a wider variety of recreational facilities than we can put into our neighborhood parks. They also can accommodate facilities that would be inappropriate within a neighborhood park, things such as lighted sports fields, swimming pools, groupings of sports courts, large group accommodations such as amphitheaters, and large picnic facilities. And they're typically 12 to 60 acres in size, and theoretically serve residents with a 1.5 mile radius, but more practically they serve the entire community because of their unique character, and people would drive to that location more commonly than you would with a neighborhood park. So if you want to visit a park that has baseball, you go to the baseball, the area, the specific park that has the baseball facilities. And as noted just previously, they also serve the residents within a 1/2 mile as their neighborhood facilities. Okay, my keyboard's not working. I'm going to have to go do it this way. So a proper implementation of the general plan should provide 1.7 acres per 1,000 residents for community parks. And that's outlined in our general plan and reestablished, or reaffirmed, I should say, in our Park and Rec master plan. And that 1.7 acres is part of the total of 4.5 acres per 1,000 residents, which is our goal, our standard. Unlike neighborhood parks, community parks are typically not provided by a single developer, and they are pre-assigned in the general plan as to their location, and planners are the ones who need to enforce to make sure that we get that when at the time is right. A good example of that most recently is the land out on Elmira that's half of which is the Play for All Park, and then immediately to the east of that is the, for now we'll call it the Elmira Leisure Town Park, that makes up the other half of that. So that is land that was dedicated by that, in that particular case, that was all owned by one developer, but that's not always the case. Interestingly enough, our current park impact fee study does not provide any funding for the purchase of land for community parks. So that, that's an interesting thing. I don't know what was envisioned at the time, but there is a clause in our document, our AB 1600, that's the park impact fee document, that indicates that those lands would be dedicated by development. Nobody's real anxious to hand over 25 acres of free land, so we need to work with that. If the city had a Quimby ordinance, that would make it a lot easier to collect monies from all the different developers around all the city in lieu fees, and then you use that money to purchase the land that's owned by perhaps one or two developers to provide new community parks. And that's, let's see, then the second bullet here is the size of the parks. They're programmed typically to be 12 to 60 acres in size. So quite a bit bigger than our neighborhood parks, and Centennial Park is a notable exception at 265 acres. I think I've covered pretty much else. Interestingly enough, in our general plan, there are only 2 new community parks listed. They are the one at Elmira, which I just mentioned, and also the one in the northeast area, which is not even in the area to be developed in the city. So we currently are looking at extra acres at Nelson Park, Patch Park, and Centennial Park. Those are the areas, and then of course the Play for All Park. Those are the undeveloped community park acres that we're currently dealing with. As far as design goes, the city's Park and Rec Master Plan provides guidance. That's our newly approved document here that are appropriate for new community parks or for additions to existing community parks. They have lists offsite characteristics and adjacent land uses that can influence the basic design. You want to make sure that, for example, if there's a creek or a rock outcropping or something like that in the park, a stand of existing trees, that your design accommodates those and takes them into account wherever possible. We would normally visualize initial site layouts when you're looking at the unmet needs of the community and say, can they be accommodated at this new site? So if there was an unmet need for, say, pickleball courts, one of the things we might ask is this an appropriate site for a series of pickleball courts? And then we try to fit all that together. And then also point 4 on the screen is that the available funding will dictate the extent for what can be done on site. I take a little aside here and mention that's really not ideal. I mean, really, ideally, as our Park and Rec Master Plan stipulates, you'd want to look at what the needs are first and then make sure the funding matches that as opposed to the reverse. I think I've covered most of that. As far as the process goes, public input is just like with neighborhood parks. It's very important for achieving the final preferred and perfected master plans. In the case of neighborhood parks, a lot of times there's nobody living in a new development, so we're looking at master planning a neighborhood park sometimes when there's nobody there. And in the case of community parks, especially those that have existed for a long time, we'll have a lot of people that want to say something. It might be the nearby neighbors, it might be special interest groups, it could be people even across town that are, in fact, just tonight you heard about the request for a disc golf course. There's a lot of folks that would want to speak up and have their voices heard on this, not to mention all of the unmet needs that have already been identified in our Park and Rec Master Plan. So the process then, after a master plan is drafted, it would come in front of the commission for review. And I should mention that a lot of our, especially with the community parks, a subcommittee or a committee would be formed off of this commission to serve as commission guidance in the development of that master plan. So when it ultimately comes to the commission will probably have heard me give reports every month on it, and plus they'll have the committee themselves that can speak to any reasons for why something was done a certain way. And then finally, we would bring a final draft to the commission that would be approved and recommended for going to the Planning Commission. Now, this is a change between neighborhood parks because neighborhood parks don't need to go to the Planning Commission. With community parks, the Planning Commission is concerned about the environmental impacts if they haven't already been fully addressed, and the impacts on the surrounding community. And they will issue a document. I think I've got something that speaks to that. Oh, no, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, sorry. That would be a conditional use permit. So they'll actually issue our existing ones have a long list of acceptable uses within a given community park. For example, at Centennial Park, there's a condition on there that says that no lighted fields can be within 1,000 feet of the adjoining homes. Well, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that made a lot of sense, but now times have changed. We have new technology that we can light a sports field with a lot better cutoff from the light, the less spillage into the neighborhood, less impacts on the neighborhood. So when we go to look at lighting another sports field at Centennial, we would ask the planning commission or maybe a staff level decision for a variance on that particular condition. So all the community parks have a conditional use permit that we need to abide by. I get into implementation just real quickly here. Construction documents are developed based on the approved master plan. The construction documents basically take the master plan and write it into very specific details on how to build that given park. So the intention is to try to follow the master plan wherever possible, but looking at all the details so you can hand those construction documents to a qualified contractor, any qualified contractor who bids on that, and he would be able to provide us the park that we're asking for. So those construction documents, they're usually a big fat roll of plans and also the actual specifications themselves, all the things that the regulations that the city has to abide by, both the local and state, and in some cases government, federal government regulations on how to build that document. My point too here on the screen is that construction is often phased for budgetary reasons, both to keep the initial cost under control and for maintenance funding. So any of the community parks that we already have, you can see how they've been phased over the years. Nelson Park has had 2 phases built at it. We went there on our tour the other Saturday, and what you saw was phase 1, and then phase 2 included some additional parking off to the east. And now we're looking at a later phase, and that later phase may also be phased. So you have multiple phasing that's restricted a lot of times for how much money you have to construct, and also for how much money you have to maintain those areas. And that also can be driven by the number of residents that are in our community. Currently, the city of Vacaville is meeting our standard, our 1.7 acres per 1,000 residents standard on community parks. So when we get new residents in, that means we need to build more community parks. And then the final point here on your screen is that Public Works, our Department of Public Works with the city, manages the construction contracts and provides the inspection to ensure that the city actually gets what it pays for. So now I'm going to jump to regional park. Notice there's no S in that term. Regional park singular because Vacaville has only one regional park. That's the Lagoon Valley Park out in Lagoon Valley. And that provides local residents and visitors from all over the region with opportunities for more nature-based activities, very large events, heritage preservation, and it provides facilities that support the use of adjoining open space. Some of those additional facilities include things like restrooms, trailheads, large group accommodations, like picnic areas and that sort of thing. And I wanted to be clear about the term regional park because I know there's been a lot of discussion and maybe misunderstanding about it. Regional park does not imply that it's that the park in question is operated by some regional entity, but rather it serves the general region. So in the case of Lagoon Valley Park a few years ago, I did a survey out there and found that 40% of the people coming in the front gate are not citizens of Vacaville. And so I frequently get the question, why am I having to pay a fee, an entry fee or a parking fee when I come into that park? And that's one of the reasons right there is because otherwise the maintenance and operations of the park would be totally 100% on the backs of the Vacaville citizenry. Whereas if by charging a park fee, it's not a big part of the budget for maintenance, but it does help at least recognize that people from outside are contributing. So the total acreage of Lagoon Valley Park greatly exceeds the city's acreage standard of 1 acre per 1,000 residents for regional parks. And that's at 318 acres total right now for Lagoon Valley Park itself, not counting the open space surrounding it. But what's interesting here is what I refer to as developed acres, and those are the acres that I include the lake because it was built, I include all the parking lots, all of the picnic facilities, the dog park, the aero modelers, all of the areas that there's actually been development. But the problem is those have degraded over the years. And so almost all of them are going to have to be rebuilt to one level or another. So we really don't have the fully developed park acres out there like we would want to have. My estimate is it's about roughly half of what our standard is, the 1 acre per 1,000 residents. So I guess another interesting thing here is that our park impact fees, our current DIF, we refer to the development impact fees for park, don't even mention Lagoon Valley Park at all. Because when they were developed in 1992, Lagoon Valley Park was operated by the county. In 1999, the city council actually reassigned 40 acres of what was then a community park along the freeway to Lagoon Valley Park. So, and there was not much detail given onto that, but it does give us a nexus to be able to say we can use some park impact fees currently for development at Lagoon Valley Park. Okay, moving along. So proper implementation of the general plan would provide at least the 1 acre per 1,000 residents, current number based on our current residents. And as I mentioned, the full acreage of Lagoon Valley Park already exceeds this standard, but it needs rebuilding and restoration. As far as the design goes, the city's Park and Rec Master Plan again provides guidance on the types of recreational amenities that are appropriate for Lagoon Valley Park. The existing landscape dictates a lot of the changes as were proposed in the 2005 draft master plan. And by the way, that had a lot of public input. I personally, before I was even an employee of the city, I participated in some of those public meetings. And so I have a history that goes back there. So it really was, that document really was heavily guided by the expressed desires of the public. But now it's languished for quite a few years. That was in 2005. And so we will, once again, once we're ready to re-up that, we'll need to re-engage with the public. So future changes to a revised master plan would be dependent a lot on the installation of utilities within the park. And the most notable, the most impactful of that would be the installation of a sewer system. Right now, there's no sewer in Lagoon Valley Park. When the lower Lagoon Valley development goes through, they will put their utility corridor right through the center of Lagoon Valley Park, and we will be able to tag on to that sewer and water line to provide water or sewer, more importantly, at a much more flexible location. So in other words, we'd be able to put restrooms, which are in the master plan, I think there's 5 of them, at the preferred locations, as opposed to being restricted to wherever you could fit a leach field. And leach field, our current restrooms, both at Lagoon Valley and then in the Peña historic area, are 100% leach field operated. They're working. They've been working since the 70s in the case of Lagoon Valley, and since the 60s in Peña. But they are very much restricted. We couldn't, the soil is very clay out there, which means it doesn't percolate well. It's not suitable for leach fields. So we would be very hard pressed to put in additional restrooms without that sewer capacity. So that's one, probably the most notable one, but there's others also. And then finally, point 4, the available funding, both for development and for maintenance, dictates the extent of what amenities can be restored and are added. So in the agreement with the developer of the lower Lagoon Valley, there's a responsibility on their part to provide $4.5 million of funding. That's in 2004 dollars, so it'll be greatly increased because of the passage of time. That is to be used for development at Lagoon Valley Park. So that's wonderful. The downside is that won't do everything that's in the draft master plan. We would need is probably 1/3 of what's in the draft master plan. So a lot more money would still be needed. And then that development also is would be required to pay for some of the maintenance of Lagoon Valley Park. So we're very restricted right now in not having funding for development and for the long-term maintenance. I will point out that our new park ranger who's been fabulous. I mean, that's been something we've been wanting for years, to have a ranger out there to help keep the illicit activities under control and to be a kind of a positive face for the city to the users of the park. And correct me if I'm wrong, Director Walker, I think that's 100% funded from the gate fees. Is that correct? Yeah. So in other words, all the users, including the 40% of the people who are not residents, they help pay for that ranger to be on duty. So it's a very direct relationship there. I think I've actually already covered a little bit of this. So the construction documents of a revised master plan are going to be very, very contingent on whether or not there's sewer and water and some of the other amenities that the developer is going to be putting in. We haven't seen that yet, so we're kind of hanging out, waiting to see if when that's going to happen. And as mentioned, the construction phases would need to be budgeted and built in pieces so that we can both afford the development and the long-term maintenance. And just like with all the other CIP projects, Public Works would manage the construction and contracts to make sure the city gets what it pays for. Now I'm going to briefly cover open space and trails. This actually is a much simpler process, I think, just because the uses in our open space are very limited. And basically it's hiking, biking, walking, some trailhead activities, some minor, perhaps picnic facility, that sort of thing could be used out there, but it's basically not developed. In Lagoon Valley Park, you have the Eastern Hills, which have a very highly, not highly, but a pretty well-developed trail system. And this commission approved the first open space park map or open space trail map not that long ago. And so that area has been fully mapped, and we're in the process of putting trail markers out at the locations and also in the process of putting in trailheads. But our other open space areas, such as the Caligari, the Glen Eagle, the Lagoon Valley Southern Hills open space, all those areas, there's no maps, there's no formal trails, there's no formal trailheads to speak of. And so all of those areas are going to have to be looked at for where trails should go, where trailheads can be placed, where parking can be accommodated, both for small facilities and also for equestrian. For equestrians, you need a larger place where you can park a trailer and unload your horses. So I very much tie trails in with open space, but they're not entirely inclusive. We do also have open space along the Alamo Creek Trail and along our Ulatis Creek Trail. Those are very popular recreational facilities, mostly paved. As you saw at Nelson Park when we visited there, there's a little piece of the Alamo Creek Trail that runs through there. And those are heavily used. Typically, you don't see horses out there. It's mostly walkers and bikers that use those trails. But the creek that surrounds those, typically for 40 feet on either side of the creek shoulder, is part of our open space map also. And all of those areas are shown in our general plan and also in our Park and Rec master plan and categorized as accessible open space. And I would be remiss in not including the open space areas that are not accessible. There's not very many of those, but there are a few that are restricted. In other words, public access is not allowed. In some cases, that would be for flood prevention, and in some case for habitat protection. So we have a few, I honestly couldn't even tell you off the top of my head how many there are. I think there's maybe a dozen or so smaller spaces that are not accessible to the public. But by and large, the 2,000 acres that we have are accessible to the public. They're just not mapped. There's no formal trails. If you get out there, you'll see a lot of people hiking around, walking their dog, biking, sometimes horseback, and most of those trails are informal. They've been developed. Maybe it was a deer trail or a cattle trail or something, or maybe even a rancher's trail that people utilize nowadays. And let's see, we got a couple more slides here. So I've mentioned the Park and Rec Master Plan does provide guidance on what can go in those open space, what sort of amenities are appropriate. Certainly the site characteristics are really important. We're really blessed in Vacaville to have, all the open space that you can hike up to Old Rocky and sit up there and think about your thoughts and basically view into Napa. You can view, if you go into the Southern Hills, you can see the windmills down by Sassoon. You can see you can see the foothills of the Sierras on a clear day. Beautiful, beautiful place to be. And so we would want to do nothing that inhibits any of those natural characteristics, primarily the hills or creeks or whatever's makes that place special. So we do need trail plans for those areas that are not developed to ensure the safety of those users and to prevent erosion of sensitive slopes. Basically, we want to keep, sometimes people will cut their own trail, and a lot of times it's like, the easiest distance is a straight line, and a lot of times that's not the appropriate way to hike in the open space. And so we would want to try to avoid those areas and create trails that go where they create the least impact on the open space. And again, available funding. We currently have no defined funding for the creation of trails and open space areas. That most of them have been dedicated by developers because it's undevelopable land. In some cases, they've been gifted, like the Caligari. I mentioned that previously. The Caligari open space was originally, I think it was a 70-acre parcel up off of Pleasance Valley Road, not near the city. We ended up doing a swap with the family's permission for some land owned by the Stocking family north of the Glen Eagle open space. And now we have two co-joined open space areas, both the Glen Eagle and the Caligari Park and Preserve, which creates, I've forgotten the total number, I think it's around 800 acres. So incredible opportunity there. But there's no money for maintenance of those. We do graze those areas, that we get a little money through David's group, where they manage the grazing contracts, and that does it's primarily for fire load reduction, so that if a fire starts, it doesn't move as quickly through there. But the cattle themselves also cause some problems with erosion. They don't follow the trails, they don't read the signs, they just go where they want to go. And so we do need a grazing master plan that will describe how we should graze, where we should graze, the timing of it, how much grazing, and all those sort of impacts. And then ultimately, what sort of amenities we want to put in there, any kind of trailheads, trail signage, benches, very simple things that can help make the best use of those open space areas. And as as COVID progressed, we saw a huge number of people going into our open spaces to make use of them, because it's a unstructured activity. You don't have to worry about how far away you are from somebody. You get lots of fresh air, and you can still get your exercise and enjoy the open space without worried about the COVID transmission. So we got overloaded in some places. In fact, I'll show a flyer later on with my park planner presentation that speaks to how we're dealing with some of those overloaded areas. The public process is, again, very important for those. We had a lot of public input on the trail plan that was done for the Eastern Hills, east of Lagoon Valley Park. And again, the Park and Rec Commission would be involved in comment on proposed plans. And it also provides an opportunity for additional public comment. And the Planning Commission would also have the opportunity to chime in on that. The implementation. So, as mentioned, those are often unbuildable areas. So the city does have a 25% slope requirement, where you cannot develop parcels with a slope over 25%. And most of our open space areas fall into that category. So you don't have to worry about homes, being built there. We also need to survey these areas. We have a number of new open space parcels that have been added to the city's holdings recently, but they have not been surveyed for, safety issues. Things like, I'll mention when the Nelson fire went through the Southern Hills, it burned all the fencing. And so we've had Cub Scouts out there, Cub Scout projects, where they've been rolling up all that old burned fencing so it doesn't get tangled in people's legs, and the cattle and the deer and, you know, wildlife. Those types of issues need to be removed so that it's not a possible safety issue. And then, of course, signage and that sort of thing so the public knows how to use it. You know, if you're familiar with most of the open space around here, pretty much downhill heads to civilization. So to me, it's a little bit hard for me to, and I've done a lot of backpacking in my years and stuff. So it doesn't bother me personally to not have a trail and the signage and the map. But I just want to share with you, there are a lot of folks, especially those from out of town, who are nervous about going out into our open space because they don't know, or they're afraid of being lost, or they don't know how to connect with people. And having a trail, a formalized trail and a map allows them to say, hey, I want to go on, say, a 3-mile hike. They can do it. They know they can get back safely. And then finally, there's a safety aspect and a maintenance aspect to having the trails mapped. Is that if you get hurt up in the open space, you can call. Most people hike with cell phones now and say, hey, I'm on the Jepson Trail at trail marker 0.10. I've fallen and hurt my ankle. Can I get some help? And that happened to me just recently where I was out in Lagoon Valley Park. Some folks came running down the hill and they said, our grandfather hurt himself up on the hill and we don't know where he's at. And there's no signage up there. So it was a situation perfect where if there had been signs, they would have known what trail they were on. We'd have been able to convey that to the safety personnel and they would have been able to get there much easier. And then also from a maintenance standpoint, if you notice that there's a maintenance issue, you can say, hey, I noticed there's an erosion problem on, you know, the Jepson Trail at mile marker 0.3 or whatever. And this commission saw some of the reparative efforts that the Scout project recently did at repairing some of those big holes that were out actually on that trail. So there's a lot of really good reasons to have them signed and mapped. And then the trail development, I just want to hit that real quickly. That can be done through a construction contract. More often, it's done by formalizing existing trails. The city actually does own what's I can't think of the name of the actual piece of equipment, but it's a trail. It's a mini bulldozer. It's 5 feet wide, and you can use it to actually build trails. And that was purchased years ago through a grant that we had for actually constructing some of these trails. So there's multiple ways that trails can be constructed. I would say, I don't see any construction contracts in our near future for the construction of trails, but rather formalizing trails that already exist. And let's see, what else we got here? So I'm to questions at that point. I'd entertain anything that you have in mind about anything I've presented tonight.
Hugh, thank you very much for your always informative presentation. At this time, we'll go ahead and open for comments or questions from the commission. Commissioner Leonard.
Thank you. Always great presentations, Hugh. Thanks. 2 things. One, you had mentioned the wildlife in the park, and that is a very unique thing to Vacaville in that there are red-shouldered hawks and kites and skunks and beavers and black-tailed deer and a whole list of migratory birds and everything else in between that are native and so accessible. Mm-hmm. It's right outside of town. There's bus stops, right? You know, and then you can walk and you can experience all of those animals and all the biology and the really cool stuff that's happening in the park. So as we modernize the park and we work on that, can you speak a little to how we kind of embrace that wildlife piece and keep that accessible, but still protect the space that those animals currently living in the park need?
Sure. The number one thing would be controlling our domestic animals. And we don't have the tools yet to do that. So for example, at Lagoon Valley Park, we continue to have a problem with people abandoning their geese out there. And that causes problems with the native species, the Canada geese that hang out there, and off-leash dogs. are a big problem for the native species. Especially the fledgling birds and things that can't get away from a dog that can take them down. As far as the actual development of the open space areas, I really see a very minimal impact on the native animals out there. The main impact would be to try to put a positive restriction on on off-leash dogs in the wrong places. And I'm a big dog proponent. I think we need more off-leash areas, so I'm not anti-dog at all. But they do cause a lot of grief for the native animals there. Interpretive signage can do great things. So that sort of thing educates the public on not only what you're seeing, but then also maybe what not to do. You know, just because you see a snake walking across slithering across your trail doesn't mean you should grab it, right? And kids need to be taught these things. So some of that kind of thing we've already put into place at Centennial Park. And actually, I'm going to share with you later tonight our final walkthrough for the Centennial Park project. And what that does is I get a little bit of an echo, I apologize. That probably does, in my opinion, that does way more benefit for the native species in having humans know how to behave in the open space than anything else we're going to do in far as actual implementation out there. The fire department has a kind of a favorite saying of that it's fires don't just happen, it's people that start fires. Well, you know, I mean, lightning does strike, but that's true for the impacts on the wildlife too. It's largely the people that create negative impacts on the wildlife. So I don't know, did I answer your question?
You did very well, thanks. But my second part of the question, you mentioned the park fees and funding the ranger, and that's all great stuff. I'm guessing that there are a lot of people who use the parks that wouldn't mind paying the $25 for 6 months, but they just happen to access park on the Butcher Road side, and I know there's no park fee thing there, and I'm sure there are some limitations to why that is. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, probably first and foremost is that those people who park on Butcher Road are not in the park. The park boundary doesn't actually start until you get to about where our Hospice Grove is. So they're walking through the open space off of North Pass Trail from Butcher Road, past the Hume Grove, come up the trail there. That's all open space. So we don't, I don't know why I'm getting it. Is that bothering you, the echo? Okay. Yeah, that doesn't, they're actually not entering the park, and there's no impact of their vehicle on the park. So the theory is that the vehicles are what does the most impact on the park. And largely that's true, that you got to have parking spaces, you got to have the roads, you got to have the maintenance on all that. If everybody just walked into the park, there would be much less impact on the park. So we currently allow pedestrians, bicyclists, equestrians to enter the park without paying the fee. And the fee is really more of a parking fee than it is an entry fee. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Commissioner Gutierrez?
And Hugh,
One second here, let me open your mic and there you go.
Okay, thanks again for that presentation. A lot of my questions you already answered. I had questions about creating the trail plans. What will go into deciding whether it will be, like you said, the mini bulldozer and it'll just maybe be a dirt plan or dirt path, or will it be asphalt or concrete? You talked about the signage. That was another question. I didn't know if there will be like dog waste receptacles or benches, and what will be kind of going into the thought process of where those will be determined or what trails will get what?
Sure. Well, you've covered a lot of ground there. I'd first note that where we can accommodate ADA paths, I would want to try to make sure that we do that. So when we put in the path at at Centennial Park, that was a an opportunity because it's quite flat out there. So it's a great place for someone who has limited mobility, whether you're in a wheelchair or a walker, or even a mom pushing a stroller, that sort of thing, and access it on a year-round pavement without getting your feet muddy. And so I think we need to always try to provide a experience for people that can't get out on a nature trail. And I'm defining a nature trail as being dirt surface, basically, usually steep and challenging. There's no way you can provide, meet ADA requirements on some of those trails, right? But we can, to some limited degree, provide similar experiences to people with disabilities in the flatter areas, or maybe where you have limited access, where you might have to go in and come back, that sort of thing. So I would always want to try to make sure we do that where we can. And interestingly enough, when you do that, it's not just the folks with disabilities that appreciate it, it's fully able-bodied people too that appreciate it. And they'll use like a paved path, they'll use it in the winter when they don't want to get their Nikes muddy. Or like I said, moms pushing a stroller, or dads, or kids on skateboards, whatever. So we call them multi-use trails, and they're used by everybody. I guess really it's only the equestrians that don't like a hard surface trail. And even then, we usually will put a bridle path next to it for that purpose. As far as what goes into it, so the areas that are defined as open space in our general plan have very limited uses that are appropriate in there. Hiking, biking, walking, those types of trail types of activities are appropriate uses, and that's about it. I mean, certainly you can go out there, you can do astronomy, you can do photography, you can do all kinds of things, but you're not going to be building a ballpark or a lighted facility or a swimming pool or anything like that in open space. So they're very restricted in what can go in there. I did, based on our first forays into updating our park and rec impact fees, that's the AB 1600 study that the city's been working on. There's a component in there now, draft, for funding development of trails. So that's not official yet. I mean, it hasn't gone in front of council or anything. But the idea is that this has been a missing component for years. We've never had that, and the idea is to provide that. So that would allow us to do that sort of development, very limited. Again, where trails can be located, you would have things like signage, trailheads, possibly a restroom if that was appropriate, watering trough, watering faucets for drinking fountains for people, maybe benches, very basic things like that. And I came up with a metric, I guess is the way to describe it, of how many trails. We don't currently have a trail standard, how many miles of trails per 1,000 residents. So we came up with a trail metric based on the trails that are in the eastern hills of Lagoon Valley, and saying that area is fully developed with trails. We don't want to add trails in that area because they're all over the place. That would be the maximum number of trails that you would put in a typical open space. And then we're working toward that kind of as a goal. And that, interestingly enough, that also guides the funding, which is why I mentioned that. So did I cover all the pieces of your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Vander Tulen.
Good evening, you Howard, today. You
Good
touched
evening.
on a lot of items, information that I wasn't aware of. And I'm just kind of curious, with the development that's occurring in Vacaville, with new home development, are the developers, is there a fee credit that they get for X amount of homes? They have to put X amount of dollars in to develop a community park or neighborhood park within the new developments? Does the city have requirements such as that? So in lieu fees, basically?
No, we don't have well, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
In lieu fees are typically associated with Quimby ordinances. We don't have a Quimby ordinance. We do have a park and rec impact fee, development impact fee, And that currently is $7,050, excuse me, on every single family home that's built, regardless of the size. Could be 12 bedrooms, it could be 1 bedroom, same fee. And that money, through the impact fee study that was done in 1992, that's divided into two components. 34.5% of it goes to neighborhood parks, and the remainder goes to community-wide facilities, things that include senior centers, community parks, swimming pools, that sort of thing. So the developers, if they're a large enough development that is required to have their own neighborhood park,
Right.
we attempt to have them do a turnkey park, where they actually would build it, and they would get either credit or reimbursement for the actual construction of that 34.5%. That was just for the neighborhood park piece. We don't typically see that for other community-wide facilities because, as mentioned, they usually take larger pieces of land. And so we try to save that other money, the remainder of that park impact fee, for development of the community-wide facilities. Did I cover it?
You covered it for me.
Okay.
I have one more kind of follow-up question. This has to go back to Lagoon Valley. So if and when that development happens, you mentioned that currently there's a $2.4 million that they're going to give to the community based on was it 2004?
It's 4.5 million, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
How
Hopefully
much was it? I'm sorry?
4.5 million in 2004 dollars. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully you get that doubled or tripled as things go forward, because as we know, they're not the expense of building the park, it's the long-term maintenance.
Yes.
And that's a challenge for every city right now is you've touched on various components and infrastructure improvements you want to do in the park. But firstly, we have to have the maintenance numbers to cover that too. That's going to require more staff at the same time. So ideally, as the parks go forward, we have that in play. And I'm sure you're planning on that. But hopefully with the Lagoon Valley, because that development will probably happen in time. It's not if, it's when it's going to happen. So hopefully they'll increase that to it's a benefit for them as well, for the homeowners that will live out there to utilize Lagoon Valley. You may get more impact on the park there, just as a result of the number of homes we built out there. So it's a win-win for them, and ideally you want them to pay the way, utilize that facility. Any comments?
Thank you very much. Any further commissioner comments or questions for Hugh? Seeing none, Hugh, I do have two questions. One, the Lagoon Valley maps, the trail maps we've talked about, how are people going to access those? Are they going to be QR codes? Are they going to be paper? Are they going to be something you print off of the internet? How are we going to access those?
Yeah, it's already posted on our website. So if you know where to find it, you can access it with a smartphone. We also plan to post a very large copy of it on a sign at the trailhead, at all the major trailheads. Most of you weren't on the commission at the time, but I think it was 3 years ago we had a Eagle project where he built a very nice trailhead posting board right at the end of Butcher Road on North Pass Trails. So the intention would be to put a very large map there. We could print maps too. It just seems like, I mean, there's nothing preventing us from doing that, but it just seems like people like to have, they have their phone with them anyway. So if you want to know where you're going, or if you have a question en route, you can pick it up and find that map and access that map. And maybe maybe you accidentally left your hard copy of the map in your car, or it went through the washing machine or whatever. You can still find it online.
Great, thank you very much. And now one more question. So as we know, it takes a lot to plan a park, and there's hundreds, if not thousands of people involved, a lot of people in this room and from other agencies. One thing you stated earlier that really kind of stuck out in my mind was you stated, so once we go through the parks, we make a recommendation, normally it'll go to the council will approve it. And then you said the building phase goes to Public Works and they take over from there. So as we know, there's possibly changes that take place during that building phase. Who approves those after they've been approved by the commission and council? And what is the process for that?
So I think what you're talking about is the development of the construction documents themselves.
Yes, sir.
Which is what, theoretically, you would take the approved master plan and the construction documents would accurately detail out that information. In the real world, master plans don't always don't interpret all the details and understand them. And so sometimes this plans change along the way. Trying to think of a good example that would, maybe it'll pop into my head in a minute, but,
Is our Parks Department still actively engaged in that building phase?
well, yes. We're in the process of trying to keep the development of the construction documents in-house, meaning we would control that. But whether we control it or whether Public Works controls it isn't as critical as making sure that the final plans are true to the intent of the master plan. That's where the rubber meets the road. So if there are changes that you have to make along the way for legitimate reasons, that they're done for reasons that we approve. And for that reason, the new construction documents that we see come across our table now, or my table, I make sure that Carrie's signature is required on those documents. So then she'll be asked to sign the final version of those, and she'll ask me, Hugh, are you satisfied with these? And I'll tell, hopefully I can tell her yes. But if the answer is no, then why not, right? What happened? Why is there a difference here? I think this commission has expressed concern in the past, very legitimately so, that if there are, or what level of changes would come back to the commission. I don't want to be too obvious here, but if we had two basketball courts shown on the master plan, and there ended up only being room for one, I think that may be significant enough to come back to the commission, and at the very least, advise you on it and say, there just wasn't room for two basketball courts because of X, Y, Z, there was an old well there or something, I don't know. If it's something even more dramatic, then we may have to bring the master plan back in and say we need to adjust it because there's a significant change there. Otherwise, little details like, maybe adding a few trees or subtracting a few trees, things like that, we would normally just do because we, as professionals, we can say, yeah, you either have too few trees or too many trees or something. And I could give you tons of examples of that. I don't know if
I think that absolutely answers the
addressed
question.
it.
So I think it's really important that the commission and the department is still absolutely engaged and actively engaged in the building phase of it, especially if there's changes. Because we've approved it here and it's
Right.
gone to the council level. And so I think it's really important that if there are major changes, like you just stated, that perhaps it comes back to the commission or council.
Yeah, and I may offer too, I try to keep the commission apprised, every month of the development of projects as they're working through. And if I advise you of something that's different than what you want, you have every right to say, hey, we want to weigh in on that. Let's schedule it for another meeting. So I may mention that we had to reduce the number of basketball courts, and you may say, we'd like to talk about that. And so you can put that on the agenda.
Great. Thank you very much, Hugh. Commissioner Leonard.
Thank you. I apologize for all the questions tonight, everyone, and you especially. One thing I forgot to ask, it seems like the users of our facilities, like our pickleball courts and badminton and tennis courts, et cetera, pools, that aren't registered through our programming, want to still be involved and want to be participatory so we know what their needs are. And it seems like they may be willing to partner with us to help give us more data. So I'm wondering, now that the pandemic has really made people comfortable with things, technologies like QR codes and other device things, Do you think there could be opportunity to create signage at these facilities where people who are willing, they're not required to, could check in and say, hey, I'm here, I'm using it at this time, this is maybe how many people are with me, that might give us some data to really clearly understand the needs of our residents and who's using it and when?
Absolutely. There's a lot of new technology that I mean, it seems like very commonly I see new software that's being offered where we can keep track of, like, for example, how many people are in our park at any given time, and then track it on a scale. We can solicit their input in multiple different ways. We already have the park rec. What's that website, Carrie? I'm sorry? Yes, not Civic Rec, but where people can send an email in to us and say, and with questions. We got one just today about dog parks, and yes. So on our website, it has a place where you can contact our department. But yeah, there's always new technology that's coming out that will hopefully make it easier for people to connect with us. That has a bad side too, because then I spend more of my day answering questions, because it's very easy for people to connect with me. I spend more of my time, answering people's questions, which I'm happy to do. I don't mind it at all, but it does take time. So, staff time taken away from one thing to give it to something else.
Like a kind of general check-in, like almost similar to Facebook and other GPS devices that would help inform our data. And this may be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what side you're looking at it, but the All Trails app has at least half a dozen or more, probably 15 of Lagoon Valley Park's trails that residents, it'll show you the trail, it'll show you where you are. If you get off the trail, it'll tell you to turn. And so as we're working on these other technologies, that might be a technology fix until, to help residents with until we get to where we really want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of to take off on that a little bit, I'll mention that Google Maps is not accurate. Anybody who's used it probably knows that. We have a trail that Google shows going through people's backyards through the Glen Eagle open space. And their backyards are not fenced, but if you pick up Google today and you look at the trails there in the Glen Eagle open space, here's this one trail that goes right through people's backyards. And they complain to me. I've made multiple requests to Google to change that, but they don't like to listen to someone who knows. They want to know how many people are actually using it. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks, Hugh.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Any further commissioner comments or questions for Hugh Hesterman? Seeing none, Hugh, thank you so much. Always informative. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Moving on to agenda item 10, committee reports. Youth Sports Advisory Team, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. The Youth Sports Advisory Team meeting was held in person on July 15th last month. Unfortunately, the first in-person meeting I was out of town, so I had to attend via telephone, but I do have some pretty good notes and was engaged as much as I could. Reggie, who I was hoping would be here tonight to pick up where I missed things, but he isn't, gave a great discussion of concession snack bar fees and where those fees go and how those are assessed by each of the leagues. There were several questions by the leagues about that, so confirming their understanding of those fees. He also did a general review of the seasonal use permits and their contracts, talking about outside user groups and or subletting to other groups, storage containers on site, signage banner use at each of the locations, field use out on Sundays that is open to the public, facility improvement process, how to hold fundraisers at the facility, postseason play, the process for requesting additional postseason tournaments and or other play, non-resident players, how to address player population from non-resident players who want to play within their leagues, blanketing fields, field maintenance, and then there was quite a discussion about T-ball age requirements, particularly in the Little League and softball arenas, and having the ability to provide T-ball that is currently run by a contract with Hardball North. So good discussions about all of those and informing all of the leagues about the details of their contract or their renewal contracts that are coming up, and giving them the opportunity to address any concerns they had. There were some discussions about Arlington Field, and a potential safety concern was brought to Public Works about Arlington Field 3. A recommendation was to have some netting so that balls don't fall onto the adjacent field. It seems to be a recurring issue where fly balls, foul balls are breaching the netting and the existing enclosure and going onto the adjacent field and or into the stands where spectators are. So Public Works said they were going to take a look at that during the off season and report back. And then Public Works also talked about the process of prepping fields for the next season. Most of the leagues have completed their season at this time, so we talked about the process for prepping fields next season and sending in for the leagues to make requests or inquiries about any additional maintenance items that they wanted addressed. And that was really the crux of the meeting. It was fairly cursory. All of the leagues, as I mentioned, had finished their season and had a fairly positive experience, being able to get kids back on the field after COVID. And even though some of the season started late, most of the participants were very happy and ended on a positive note. So that's good.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate all the hard work you're doing out there and making it all happen and keeping everybody safe. Thank you.
Out there working. Thank you.
10B, Play for All Committee, Commissioner Bruman.
Am I on? There I go.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I've actually attended quite a bit of the meetings. The Monday meeting was canceled because of vacations, but a lot of things I actually took a drive out there today to see if any progress has been made. And now there's 9 pads that have been poured out there for the picnic areas, which is great, because that was a little delay thing. The other thing that's happened, the play equipment has been ordered for phase 1. It should be here within 10 to 12 weeks. Also, I talked to Tom, and the fencing, the iron fencing for the front and the side of the road, it's going to be coming in, and also chain link for the baseball fields are out there. They're going to be out there, going to be set up. But yeah, the equipment that was ordered for the play was actually about $400,000. So it's quite a bit of a big price tag on most of the things that they have to get. And then also the fencing was $20,000 more than they anticipated. But this COVID, everything's gone a little higher and from the original estimates. But there are, we're all in good thought. Everything's looking positive. They're planning to get some fundraisers together, hopefully do like a fun run, and then also possible team up with Beer 40 at one time, and probably a Labor Day weekend. Well, Fiesta is going to try to generate some funds from that. But phase 1 is so close. So all Tom says, please go to their website, buy that brick, that $100 brick or the $200 brick. It's a great thing, and they're so close. And once that gets in there, because the phase 1, that's where the wheelchair swing is going to go. It's in a we go round, which is a merry-go-round that holds 2 wheelchairs. And then the zip line that also holds 2 wheelchairs that the kids can go down. And they're getting, it's really close. They've got the one phase for the asphalt. They got to finish it up because they got to put another layer on that. But he has one to hold off until all the big trucks stop coming in and out of there that don't destroy the road. So, but other than that, our next meeting is August 23rd, and hopefully they're building or something's happened already.
Thank you very much. I know we're all excited to see that park
Yep.
open and get the kids out there playing.
For sure.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Agenda item. Agenda item number 11, Parks Planner, Hugh Hesterman.
Well, you get to hear from me again. I apologize for that. I do have a few things that I wanted to share with you just about status of current projects. You should be seeing the dog parks at Roberts Ranch. Those are the ones right off of Fry Road, under development very soon. That's going in with the phase 1. And then phase 2, actually I have a display I'll share with you on that, that shows what phase 2 will be. From what I hear from the developer, the home builders are jockeying out there. They've already got, I think, 4 of them committed to neighborhoods and a 5th one on the way. So development is going crazy, which actually is making my life a little difficult because I'm having to respond to so many developments right now that are underway. But it's a very good thing from a Parks and Rec position because we're actually seeing some things that are being developed. Phase 2 of Roberts Ranch will be largely open space, connecting trails that come from the dog park and then going up to the phase 3, which will be a couple years in the distance. But we've negotiated with the developer to include the pickleball courts in phase 2. So there's a set of 4 courts there. I'm going to see if I can operate this newfangled device here and share that with you. That's a great thing. Yes, okay, here we go. So, oops, I guess you can't see that yet. All right, hopefully you should see that. What's in front of you here is the phase 2 a portion of Roberts Ranch. And I realize the font is very small, so don't worry about that. I'll just point out the general areas. Down to the southern area is where the 2 dog park areas, that's what's under construction right now. Phase 2 is the portion that's north of that, and the pickleball courts are in this general area here. So because that whole area is irrigated from phase 3 to the north, we won't see any landscaping being installed in phase 2. But we will be able to get the pickleball courts, we think, installed, and that will take some pressure off of our precious tennis courts that are being used by tennis players, pickleball players, skateboarders, dog runners, and all sorts of other ancillary uses. So I just wanted to share that with you. Also, the developer for the Montesa subdivision, this is the subdivision that was proposed in 2007, is back on the books again. It is the empty field that is west of Keating Park. So if you're on California Drive facing Keating Park, it's the big empty field to your right. And they will be, there's no park going in there, but they will be addressing some issues that we want to preclude, or things that we want to preclude from becoming issues for those new homes, and preventing complaints about, say, the noise from the ball games, the stray lighting, all that sort of thing from living next door to a neighborhood or from a active use park. It's not the most ideal neighbor. I'm not doing that. Maybe Wayne's doing that. But that will be a very good thing. And then the Green Tree subdivision is working forward, where we had a meeting just this morning talking about, again, struggling with the cost of developing. I'll try to take that. Actually, I want to use it again. The cost of developing the parks in Green Tree. There's 2 parks being proposed. One is a 6-acre neighborhood park that would serve all the new residents. And then to the south of that is, I think it ends up being a little over 4-acre senior park that would serve not only the new residents south of Sequoia Drive, but also the existing residents south of Sequoia Drive. And this is, it's kind of a new territory for us a little bit. We don't have any parks in our basket of parks that are designed to serve specifically seniors. So you'll see some things that are kind of unique there that are not typical for neighborhood parks. Things like a little a little amphitheater area, a small dog park, a putting green, and some other things. So that's coming. If you've been involved in the Green Tree meetings at all, you may have already been exposed to those designs. So they have been made public. Also, I want to report back on Magnolia Park Phase 2. At our last meeting, I reported that that agreement was going to council. It did indeed go to council. It was approved. So that developer, Agape, will be constructing Phase 2 of Magnolia Park as a turnkey facility. And through that agreement, they will be covering the extra costs that we otherwise couldn't afford. So they'll be kicking in a bunch of their own money for that. That's pretty much the only way to develop parks in Vacaville nowadays. So we're always trying to negotiate and trying to get more for the citizens' buck. Corderos Park, we are in the throes of, or the beginnings of negotiating with the consultant who originally designed that park for the city. They have all the original drawings already. Originally, it had a basketball court there, some additional picnic facilities. So it should be very easy for them to pick those drawings up, add those on, and through the Measure M monies, we'll be building those early on. And we also have a consultant working on the bifurcation of the dog park at Lagoon Valley Park, which has caused some problems because it's only one area. And so it's been some conflicts between the big dogs and the little dogs. I don't know what you do when you have a medium-sized dog, but no, I do, I'm teasing. And then finally, I wanted to, because of our tour on Saturday, we didn't have the time to get into the northern area of Centennial Park. All we did was just walk around. If you recall, we went through by the dog park, the VYSL soccer field complex, and then we wrapped back down through the ballpark. We didn't have time to get up into the northern area, and that's where we just completed the urban greening grant. And I wanted to share because of COVID, they're not allowed out to do closeout. Normally, they would bring their project managers and their upper end to come out and actually see what actually was built with their $680,000. They're not able to do that because of COVID regulations. And quite often in those project walkthroughs, a commissioner or two might be involved also. So we can't do that because of that, but we are doing a virtual walkthrough, which I will share with you right now if I can make this happen here. Oops, I got to transition this. Sorry. There we go. Got to learn the new technology here. It came up. So this should be on your screens also, hopefully. So this is the pictorial walkthrough that we sent to the grantors, and they have received it and approved it. I'm gonna do things. So there's Centennial Park. It's a general location from a city aerial. This is the hatch marks in green there are the areas that were improved through the grant, and you can see they follow the two tributaries, the northern and central tributaries of Horse Creek. This is the existing trail that's along the railroad, the old railroad right-of-way. That is probably the primary and most often used access to the new development there. And we're going to start the pictorial tour at the northwest corner of the project, and it will follow down the red lines, and then we'll jump down to the southern portion. As is required by grant projects, there has to be a bond acknowledgement sign, and you can see that this was paid for by the Parks Water bond of 2006. And our partners in here are the Natural Resources Agency, Solano Resource Conservation District out of Dixon. They were, and incredible partners. I mean, I can't say enough good things about how much help they provided on this. They made it happen. We have interpretive panels. There's a total of 10 of them, and this kind of speaks a little bit to some of the things that Commissioner Leonard was asking about. This is intended to educate the people using the trail, has a little bit of information about what can actually be seen in front of you. And then as you see at the very bottom, see if my cursor can show you here, there's a QR code and also internet link that if you scan that, it'll take you to the city's webpage, which has more information about the same subject. So throughout this whole project, there's a consistent approach here. We'll go to the side. For those who are used to looking at native plants, this is a beautiful thing. The native grasses, the new trees, the new shrubs are all doing very, very nicely on temporary irrigation that's operated during the summer, typically I think once a month, but they're looking really nice. The casualty rate on this project was extremely low. Typically when you plant a bunch of trees out in an area, you expect that some are going to die, but we had very, very few die out here. This is just some of the trees to show. You can see there's a beaver cage wrapped around these particular trees. Anything within about 50 feet of the waterways it had been cut down, probably overnight if we'd put it in and not protected it. So we do want these to get to some maturity without the beavers taking them out. Temporary irrigation I mentioned, so all the plants in front of you here on this slide have temporary irrigation provided to them. And the idea is to get that through the first 3 or so summers. This is interpretive panel number 2, talks a little bit about the park history, and it's looking toward the old farmstead site. Again, each interpretive panel includes a QR code and a link to the city's webpage. This is interpretive panel number 3, features reptiles that can be seen in the park. Tells a little bit about each one. Each of these interpretive stops is designed to accommodate memorial benches. We have, I don't know if I've explained that program to this commission, but the city does offer a memorial bench program where you pay, I think it's a lot of money, it's like $2,700, but you get a little brass plaque on the bench. You're guaranteed for 20 years basically of maintenance. You get the concrete pad, the installation at your preferred location. So each of these interpretive stops here have a pre-approved site for 2 memorial benches, and this is one that was installed already. By the way, that memorial bench program is quite popular, so popular that Andrews Park and Alamo Creek Park, we basically can't accept anymore. We're benched out. We got too many or enough benches. Interpretive panel number 4 talks about the native shrubs and gives some examples there. California wild rose is an example. You see on the left here the toyon and the yeah, the redbud, thank you, yeah. Anyway, I won't go through all this detail here. Interpretive panel number 5 talks about the riparian trees, gives examples of all those, and I have a few examples here of those. You can see by the way, the tubes around these that are just protective tubes, those are considered temporary, help prevent damage from, say, weed eaters or the beavers or anything when they're very young. Ultimately, they'd be removed. The new pathway was installed and we had some existing trees, in this case, these casuarina trees that we worked around and through, so they provides a really neat change in the environment as you're walking down this trail, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a forest of casuarina trees. Interpretive panel number 6 talks about bird boxes, and if you click on that link, you can learn how to build bird boxes for different birds. By the way, I should mention, the Audubon Society did a bird survey a couple years ago. They identified 80 different species of birds in Centennial Park. That just blew my mind. And, if you're quiet, go out there in the morning, you can see an awful lot of really, really neat stuff. Interpretive panel number 6, that was taken in the spring when the ground was green, just so you can see. And there's a few of the bird boxes. These were all Eagle Scout projects, by the way. Different bird boxes that are more suitable for different types of birds. There's a close-up of some of them. As you can see, they're being used. Unfortunately, I didn't go out at the right time of day to actually see a bird going in. I was out there in the middle of the morning trying to get these photos. And you can see some of the bird boxes in the background here. Panel number 7 talks about the native wildflowers. Some were planted, some were existing. This next slide shows the Brodia that existed on site and is really neatly displayed in this springtime photo. You can see the purple flowers out there. And of course, the California poppies. A lot of these were planted with the project. Here's a panel that talks a little bit about the off-leash dogs. There's a lot of folks who let their dogs off-leash out here. And that is, it causes a lot of harm to the wildlife that's trying to raise their young out there. This is just a shot here. This shows how the restored areas are delineated from the areas that are disc annually, both for fire protection and also just for weed abatement. The native grasses are not disked, and the interesting thing about them is they will do their drop their seeds after the time that we need to have the disking done. So basically, if you plant native grasses and then you go out there and disc them in time to meet your deadlines for getting your disking done, you won't see much regeneration. And so that's why it's really important to try to let them regenerate naturally and not take them down too early. Panel 9 talks about the birds themselves that are out there and gives some examples, and you can see those yourself. And this is just another view of the same thing looking toward the northwest. You can see the houses off in the distance in Browns Valley there. And I think actually to the left, I think that's Old Rocky there. And I tried to get a few shots of the birds, but at 10 o'clock in the morning, they weren't very cooperative. And this is looking back on interpretive stop numbers 10. Panel number 10 is looks to the grasses and wildflowers. And again, with all of these, there's links back to the city's webpage. The shot looking to the left, you can see the milkweed right in the foreground there. I'm just clicking through this pretty quickly just to get a flavor of it. A lot of folks out there. I was fortunate to run into a lot of people that were walking or biking and just had an opportunity to chat with them. Nobody wanted me to take their photo, so I wanted to share that with you. But and this is back to the walkway along the Sacramento Northern line and just heavily used. I think that's the end of the slideshow, so I'd be happy to entertain any questions about any of the things that I've talked about.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the Commission for Park Planner Hugh Hesterman? I see none. Hugh, thank you so much for all you do. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Item number 12, reports of the Recreation Manager, Melody Ocampo.
Good evening, Commissioners, once again. Hugh's going to be putting up a couple flyers for me here, our program announcements. We did get our fall guide out. Hopefully you all got that in the mail. You should have received that earlier this week, not late last. So that we're excited to have some programs and have kind of a more normal, quote unquote, offering. So we were very excited to produce this guide. He was going to just show a little cover for me here. And you just flash that up for a quick second for folks home. There we go. Sorry. And then Hugh, we can just jump to the next one. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the programs, specifically some things that are coming up with our therapeutic rec team. This is a pizza party happening this Saturday. This group especially has been dying to get a little bit more social. A lot of these folks are not able to get together as much and have the opportunities to engage with each other. And so this is just a simple gathering so that folks can come together. And so we're excited to have that and excited to be growing our therapeutic recreation program. This is a new event that we are showcasing, again, this Saturday. This is the Cardboard Boat Regatta. This is something where teams of 4 can come and compete. They actually take duct tape, cardboard. I think you get, 1 X-Acto knife kind of thing, and an adult supervisor that you have to have on your team, and put together a cardboard boat. The picture you see there is actually a little test run by some of our campers, and they had a great time out there on the water, and we didn't get too far, but it's a lot of fun. We have a teen survey, so we are trying to expand some of our teen programs and bring teens in to actually be the leaders and the event organizers more so. So this is just kind of the preliminary steps that we're taking. We're going to be getting this out through the school district to our teens, as well as some of our existing participants. So this is just something that we wanted to put on your radar, that we're trying to engage a little bit more with that group and then bring them in. We have some old programs, traditional dances, and different teen events, but we really want them to be the ones telling us what they want and leading those things and giving them that leadership opportunity. And then, of course, hiring. We need more staff. We need more staff desperately. We, as I mentioned, we are trying to bring on kind of a more normal volume of programming. And to do that, we desperately do need more folks to come and work for us. And specifically highlighted, you see on this flyer, is some of our recreation specialists, preschool teachers, before and after school program staff, our sports staff, aquatics, and our customer service, our front desk. So, we unfortunately are doing limited hours, and in some cases having to either combine or limit some of our programs simply due to low staffing levels. So we're really trying to pick that up. Across the board, you see that in almost every industry right now. So we're all struggling to bring folks on so that we can offer services as we would hope to. So that's it for me. Any questions?
Melody, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Melody?
Thank you all.
Commissioner Gutierrez does have a question for you, Melody.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, please.
Thanks again, Melody, for everything that you do. And it's actually really exciting to see a lot of these events come back and the programs come back. As far as TGIF, are we working closely, with the school board or with the schools to kind of find out what their guidelines are going to be once school's in session, like with masking and things like that? And is the plan to mirror that?
Yes, so we are working very closely with them. I think, as much as we can. I can't guarantee that we'd be, mirroring or doing exactly what they're doing, because we have to make sure that we're following our own internal that are approved by our leadership team here that have very close contact with the county health department. However, we are very closely, we meet regularly with the staff who are in charge of the kind of before and after school time. And we have close relationships with the principals at each of our campuses. And we actually have a supervisor who will be attending the board meeting tomorrow night to be there to answer questions from the board. So yes, we definitely have a strong working relationship with the schools.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
Melody, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Item 13, reports of the director. Carrie Walker.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. I just wanted to share with the commission, Park Plan was working on some agreements with consultants, and that is really a lot of what's going on in the office these days with all of the upcoming projects. It's an exciting time. And so in addition to those projects that Hugh mentioned, we're also working on negotiating agreements and mapping out scopes for the Pheasant Country Park project, Sierra Vista, Meadowlands, Alamo Creek, and also are getting quotes and working with contractors on both the Arlington and Centennial Park ball field lights. And Trower Park, that consultant's already on board because of the Prop 68 grant submittal application process that we were already engaged in and involved in. So, and I just want to reiterate what Mel said about the staffing. If any of you have any just really creative ideas or thoughts, because we are using social media, we have put magnetic placards on our vehicles. We have banners out in the parks. We have staff within the last month participated in 2 job fairs, and virtually there was not a lot of participation. And so, yeah, we, desperate times call for desperate measures, and unfortunately, some of what we're having to resort to, transporting kids probably for some of our after-school programs, doing some consolidation there, which we really don't like to do. But that's the situation we're in these days. So if any of you have any, great ideas or suggestions for, how we could recruit and get some staff on board. We've also put some incentives in place. But we, appreciate and welcome any of your thoughts or ideas. And then lastly, I just want to thank all of you again for participating in the park tour. It was a good morning, enjoyable, and hopefully we'll get to do some more of those soon. That's all I have. Thank you. Any questions?
Director Walker, thank you very much. And I see Commissioner Gutierrez does have a question for Director Walker.
Sorry, me again. I would love to help with staffing ideas, and I actually have a few running through my head, so I may connect directly with you, Mel, on that. But one of them, I think on a lot of the advertisements that I see going around social media, but if you guys are able to put the minimum age requirement on that, I think that will draw. I get a lot of questions when I repost it, can my teenager do this job? And I think if we have on there, minimum age 16, that would help draw, the younger kids, because I think a lot of times when they see city positions, they automatically think you need to be, 21 and older to participate. But other than that, I'll also brainstorm some other ideas. I don't know if internally there's a referral program or other things like that, but I'll connect with Mel. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Leonard.
Director Walker, is there an age limit, in terms of liability or for some of these programs where you can't employ minors for various reasons, or are you looking for all ages?
Those, and I apologize because I don't know if it's 15 and a half, that there's a particular age where they would have to have a work permit. And so any applicants that qualify for a work permit and then age up.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Director Walker, thank you very much, ma'am. All right, we are at item number 14, reports of the commission. And we'll start with Commissioner Bruman. One second here, I apologize. Commissioner Bruman.
I'm on. Okay. I just want to thank you for very instructive and, good to see the QR actually working at a park. And great to, we're going to see more of that, a lot of the other parks, Lagoon and everywhere else. So I know, like you said, it goes in steps and it's one thing at a time, and it's kind of hard to try. Everybody wants it done now, and it doesn't happen that way. And I appreciate your report on that, because that's actually, I think I'm going to take that hike down, take the doggies out there and check it out, because I was not aware of all that going on over there. And thank you to staff over here, and we'll try to find you guys some help. But thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Gutierrez.
Definitely want to echo, thanks to everyone and their hard work. The facilities tour was great and super informative. I totally signing up for part 2 of that. If we ever are thinking about that, I would love to just dive a little bit deeper into maybe looking at some of the trails or Lagoon Valley. But again, just thank you. And Mel, I'll connect with you, because even while I'm sitting here, I'm just all kinds of ideas coming up. We're going to get you guys some people.
Thank you very much for that. Commissioner Leonard.
I got my events guide in the mail, and every time I go through it, even though I've seen it a dozen times, I am always so impressed at the volume of programming, from youth sports to cultural arts to seniors. And the intentional effort that your team and the city has put into being inclusive of people with different abilities in our parks and those considerations. It's just so exciting, and it makes me so proud to be in that. And I would just say that those programs bring people of all different backgrounds from all different places all across the city together and build a sense of community. And that has a wide-ranging ripple effect. I still bump into people that my kids played Parks and Rec sports with as we sat in the bleachers together, and it's been 20 years. So that's really exciting, and thank you for all the hard work that you put into that, and all the marketing and everything that you're doing to talk about the program. I will also say the candidates for the Arts Advisory Commission were phenomenal. It was really exciting. I feel like we've got a team of people with really different perspectives. And it was very exciting to be a part of and just listen to the ideas. And I think the new committee members will really continue your team's effort and the conversations that we have had around art being a really important way to create a vibrant community, and most importantly, reflect the residents living in that space, and your efforts to not just bring art in the community to artists, but also how do we make it accessible to kids and residents that live near those park spaces and all the other things. So that was really exciting. I thank you for letting me be on that, and lots of great things to come from that committee. So as always, great job, you guys. And I'll also help you find people if I can through the schools.
Thank you very much, Pam. Commissioner Thompson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to briefly acknowledge Mr. Clary, who was our public speaker early on. I think that he is vastly underestimating the disc golf contingency here in Vacaville. It sounds like he was well on that page and understands the concern there. But I've had several people ask me since I've been about disc golf for accessible areas. Lagoon Valley is a great place, and people, who are able to drive there, but I know there's a lot of youth that would like to get involved in disc golf, and something in some neighborhood parks or something a little bit closer. It sounds like you're on top of that, Hugh, but I just wanted to do that. I also wanted to comment on your presentation about the trails. As a prolific user of Centennial Park, I have personally witnessed lots of use of those trails, as I've seen as well, but positive feedback about the signs and how educational they are. And I've watched people, I can't quite get my QR code to work. Oh, wait, there it is. Look at all this amazing information. And so I've seen lots of use of that. So I think it's a very positive thing for our community. It's a great project that was undertaken, and I think it's been outstanding for the users of Centennial Park. So thank you for all of your effort on that, Hugh. Thank you for reporting back on that. And lastly, I'm happy to see that the recreation guide is growing and bigger than it was last season or last summer. So that's a good thing. So thank you, staff, for all you do.
Thank you very much, sir. Commissioner Vandertulen.
Oh, there. Trails. Oops, I'm not on. Ah.
It was on.
Okay, there we go. All right. I won't backtrack too much. So Hugh, again, thank you for your presentation. About the trails, when you read surveys from communities and what communities are looking for, the number one activity is walking, getting out and exercise. Trails are very important to us. So the more that we can enhance them and get, the better for the. So thank you for your efforts on that and getting the information out. But I too want to echo about that. Every time I get this in the mail, I don't look at anything else. I grab this first to go through it, see what activities. I will say that grandchildren have benefited from it, starting in preschool, some of the sports. So it's a welcome document or magazine that comes in, or to share with my family. Did you get this? Did you get this? Did you read it? See what activities they're going to be signing for. Those are my comments. It was very informative. Again, fantastic job for for all the information shared. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to echo what has been said by, I think, every member of this commission. The past year and a half or so has been challenging, and those challenges change every day. And thank you so much to the staff. You guys do a great job. It is exciting to see all the events in the events guide. I hope they all go. I don't know what tomorrow holds, and neither does anybody here, but you have just been flexible and been creative, and it's much appreciated, not just by us, but by the community. The 100,000 people who live here really appreciate it. I know people are really excited about the Creek Walk being back, and I mean, that's evident. If you go downtown on a Friday night, there are a lot of people out there enjoying what we do here in Vacaville, so thank you so much for that. Also, we are a user of Centennial Park, the trails out there. The QR codes are great. We ride our bikes out there often as a family. The one issue we have is cell service is not always great out there, so that is an issue, but it is nice when it comes up to be able to be more informed about the native plants out there and the wildlife that's out there. It's really exciting. So we do appreciate that. And then also, I also want to comment on the July 24th special meeting that we had. Thank you so much. That was very informative. We learned a lot, and it was great to have some of our public community members join us. So it's great to hear from them, and they're excited about what's going on, just like we are. So thank you so much. And again, the staff made that just look effortless, and that doesn't happen without a lot of planning. So thank you so much to all that were involved, from the agenda to getting everybody there on time. Great job, timekeeper, and then the delicious lunch that was served at the end of that. So thank you so much. It was very informative. With all that said, we will now adjourn this meeting till the regular meeting of Wednesday, September the 1st, 2021. Good night, Vacaville.